Serious people who have had a serious disease, cancer, MS, organ failure, etc. When did you realize something was really wrong? Attention! Serious tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. I started jogging again to try and get back into running shape. I kept noticing that just after a mile or so, I'd stop and get really lightheaded. Kept thinking, oh, I'm really out of shape, and kept going. Went in a few weeks later for my annual physical and doctor said, "You ever been told you have a heart murmur?" No. 2 months later I spent Christmas of 2017 in the ICU after having a section of my aorta cut out and a new valve put in. Surgeon said it was bad. Said it wouldn't have made it too much longer. Edit, for clarification, it was an aortic dissection. I was diagnosed with MS when I was 22 after having blurred vision in one eye after a ski trip. I went to the optometrist and they said I had a dry eye, probably from not wearing goggles while snowboarding. So they gave me steroid drops. After a week it kept getting worse, so I went back and they told me my eye looked much better, so they did a field of view test, which showed I couldn't see anything out of the lower half of one eye. They sent me straight to the emergency room since nothing was physically wrong with my eye. They did some tests and I was diagnosed with MS and ended up going completely blind in one eye. My vision eventually came back and I got on medication within a month, so haven't really had any symptoms or issues since, thankfully. I'm only 29 now though. My mom's story. We moved a lot when I was young. Dad was in the military. Last stop was in New Jersey, 1980. Through the 80s my mother's coordination and sense of balance slowly got worse and worse. She joked that she was probably just allergic to New Jersey. It got bad enough that in 1986 we addressed this with the doctor. They tested for inner ear infections and a host of other things it could have been. Thought it might have been mercury poisoning from her fillings, so she had them all replaced. Finally in the summer of 1988 they did the spinal tap and found out she had chronic progressive MS to boot. By 1990 she gave up driving. By the mid-1990s she was wheelchair/scooter bound. Fast forward to the late 2010s after other serious health issues. Not germane here, and all of a sudden she starts losing weight. By this time she has a host of doctors looking at her different issues. They assume one of her issues or the other is the problem. Finally in late 2017 she has her colonoscopy and they found it. A stage 4 cancerous tumor. We did our best to make her last year and a half as comfortable and fulfilling as we could. We did things for her to make sure her last days were filled with as many good memories as possible. But it did its thing and we said goodbye on February 2, 2019. I guess the big thing is, sudden changes should never ever be ignored. My wife started getting numbness in her right arm. The breast cancer had spread to her right shoulder and the tumor was crushing the nerves. She has stage 4 breast cancer in her bones. Wife's family friend. One day they were eating dinner but she just stared at the plate. She looked up and said, "I can't move my arms." Brain cancer. I met her one time at a wedding and she wore a hat to cover these horrifying stitches on her skull from the surgeries. She passed away after a brave fight. At 49 I woke up and thought I had to go number 2, but it was just blood. Luckily, I was on a blood thinner, so the colon cancer growth blocking my digestion bled much earlier than normal. Surgeon thinks heart problem, reason for thinner, saved my life. Good thing I had a 90% blocked artery at 48. I don't know if my gallbladder fucking up is actual organ failure, but it did fail to function enough that they decided to take it out, eventually. I was naked on the toilet and passed out from the pain and struck my head on the countertop on my way down. I woke up with my head spinning and I was telling myself not to poop anymore because I'm home alone and not on the toilet anymore. Then when I really did come to, I pulled myself out of the bathroom, got dressed, and into my car and went to the ER. There I was told that I tested positive for marijuana, so that's why I hit my head. I was too goddamn high to even stay upright on the toilet, apparently. I left there and drove 30 miles north to a town of 14,000 people and took myself to that ER. They gave me a sonogram, CAT scan and finally a test called HITA scan. The HITA scan showed my gallbladder was only emptying at 8% and the surgery recommendation was 32% or less. They took it out the next day. Lost an ovary to ovarian cyst torsion. It's a completely treatable condition if it's diagnosed in time. Fatal if it isn't. Went to 2 hospitals over the course of 5 days for the pain, and got the brush off until the 3rd visit when they rushed me into emergency surgery. This piece about how the healthcare system ignores women's pain is written by the husband of a woman who had the same condition I had. Basically, I was minus a husband to advocate when the ER staff didn't recognize an emergency as an emergency. It is sadly common for medical bias to do this to women. A few useful LPTs. According to my gynecologist, one of the ways ovarian cyst torsion feels different from appendicitis is when you lie in different positions, such as turning from your back to your side, the severity of the pain may change. Either is a medical emergency. But when it's the right ovary, the pain is in a similar location. And yeah, this is 10 pain on the 1 to 10 scale. If you're a woman heading into the ER or urgent care with those symptoms, insist on an ultrasound. That's the standard diagnostic test. I have 11 staples in my abdomen because all of half a dozen medical doctors were too biased to bother running that test. By the time they finally ran it, my ovary was dead and in danger of bursting. If you're a woman in the ER or urgent care under these circumstances and you're still getting the brush off after specifically requesting an ultrasound, then start a paper trail. If you haven't been given a room, then insist the triage nurse state a reason in your record why you've been deprioritized. If the physician doesn't think an ultrasound is necessary, then insist the doc write in your record that he is refusing your request for an ultrasound. Get out your phone and start taking your own notes. Look up a malpractice attorney. This is one situation where extreme measures are called for, and the fear of a lawsuit is more likely to get the appropriate action than losing your temper, because if you make a scene they may misinterpret your problem as psychiatric. To the gentleman reading this, I understand every kick to the groin in history. My gonad went through 3 complete rotations before it died. When a cancer screening test came up positive. Thanks to the NHS I'm still alive. If I'd had to pay for cancer screenings, I'd not have been able to afford them and would probably have been dead by now. It still amazes me that some people in the UK turn down free cancer screening tests. Testicular cancer here. I realized it when my X-rays were allowed to proceed despite a strike in the hospital. It's been 35 years, no worries. I had been having a lot of pain in my midsection, and all around my torso for several weeks. I went to the doctor and it was dismissed as gynecological cramping, menopausal. It remained. After several weeks, 6 to 8, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to emergency in the middle of the night. I got a CT scan that showed a large kidney stone. They also found a mass on my ovary. The kidney stone led them to finding a rare ovarian cancer. If not for that stone, I wouldn't have known about the cancer and might not have caught it in time. I have been in remission since September 2021. When I couldn't stop vomiting, that was the sign and the moment doctors started to take me seriously. Just found out I have rectal cancer. 42 years old. Multiple stools per day, not fully emptying, thin poop. So got a colonoscopy. Bam. Cancer. Starting chemo next week. Lesson learned for everyone: if your stools or stool schedule changes, go see a doctor. Time to stroke my anxiety by reading the comments. Smiling face with heart eyes. Wasn't me but my sister. She lost a decent amount of weight in a short period of time and began sleeping a lot more and just being tired in general. After that came the hair thinning and pain in the joints. She was diagnosed with a cluster of autoimmune diseases affecting different parts of her body. At first the doctors would call it a connective tissues disorder. Cause of death on her certificate was multi-system organ failure. Worst few months of my life. I can only imagine how much she was suffering. I couldn't walk anymore with my crutch I had been using to get by. Had been on Percocet for 8 months because of the extreme pain. Nobody was finding answers to my pain, but I knew something was wrong, badly. After finally having an ultrasound on my hips at the age of 26, I found out I had to undergo a double hip replacement to walk again due to a serious rare disease. I was stage 4 avascular necrosis. Took a year to recover from both. But happier ending, I'm doing good now. However, it was very upsetting news to get over a phone call at 26. I never did, my teacher and parents did. I was 7, usually an active kid, and my first grade teacher noticed that rather than running around at recess I sat down and took a nap. It happened a couple more times, and after I fell asleep in class, totally out of character, she gave my parents a call. We had been visiting the doc fairly regularly cause I was also complaining of joint pain and frequent ear infections combined with the new symptoms, and a new doc at the practice. I was finally diagnosed with leukemia. I started feeling small, sharp twinges of pain in my right breast. The skin texture under the nipple changed and looked like an orange peel texture. My primary care doctor told me it was mastitis. He didn't even feel for lumps until I asked him to. He prescribed naproxen for the pain and had me get a mammogram. It was stage 3 ductal breast cancer. I had a mastectomy in 2020. Got chemo and radiation. I'm doing well now. My kid, who was 14 at the time, kept throwing up in the morning and having weird headaches. Her doctor thought it was migraines. She went back a couple of times, but the doctor was not concerned. Then one day she complained of a whooshing noise in her ear. Went to the children's hospital and found out it was a brain tumor near her cerebellum. She was in ICU for a month, but turned out it was non-cancerous and it never grew back. She is doing great now.